Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves hit theaters this weekend. Let's see how it does on the Hot Pockets to hand grenades spectrum. So as usual, we're going to start off with story. The story on this one is very much your typical fantasy story. Group goes on a quest to grab a magical item to thwart evil overlord's plot. It is not really a play on the story necessarily, but how it is executed. It is a wild and very engaging storytelling method. I saw this in a Screen Crush video, where Ryan Airy was actually saying that this movie perfectly portrays a D&D campaign, in how all of the most of the side characters are all not very important, and they're NPCs in a game, so they don't grow throughout the story, and so they come off as generic, while your main characters info dump you with backstories right off the bat, and then they grow as the story goes along. And that actually made me appreciate this movie a lot more. This film is way more eccentric in its storytelling than previously thought, and because of that, this movie gets a solid hand grenade score, as it is a very explosive film that I will now cover based off the cinematics. Now, holy shit, there are scenes in this film that look extravagant, great CGI, and then there are some scenes that it's a little bit iffy, but if you take into account that, it's you have the dungeon master explaining to you the scene and what you find yourself in, you can sort of play into that as part of the film. And a lot of that is fucking great. It makes it such a more enhancing experience. And the backing score was also really cool. It was a very funny movie. The theater was laughing quite a bit, and I don't think a lot of people were expecting it to be as jokey as it was. And then I'm like, where have I seen these directors from? And then I realized that every time I clicked on their names, I was like, oh, this is why I actually wanted to see this film. Actually, it's two reasons: Chris Pine and the team behind it. Cinematics? You know what? Since we're going to start talking about the directors, it's time to end the cinematics portion, which is another solid hand grenade score. Now, the reason I ended up seeking this film is because of the directors. They did some of my favorite comedies, and honestly, I'm surprised Jason Bateman wasn't in this movie, because they did Game Night and Horrible Bosses, and Jason Bateman's in both of those. And they were also the people who wrote the screenplay for Spider-Man Homecoming. So they have a lot of prior experiences in comedy. So I don't know. This movie really plays off of those previous experiences, and I loved it. It was well directed. I thought it was, like I said, when Ryan Airy pointed out that it is a perfect representation, it's like a near perfect representation of a D&D campaign. I haven't been in many of those, but in the few that I have done, it is very similar to exactly what they filmed. If you imagine that the four main characters are actual player characters in going through a D&D campaign, it actually plays out pretty similarly, and I would know because I have been just as eccentric as Chris Pine's character. So directing, honestly, not only is that a hand grenade score, but it's an A+ grade in my book. No notes. Now let's get into the acting, where I absolutely loved Chris Pine in this role. He would literally be a bard. He just looks like he was having the time of his life every time he got to be on the screen. He's just got that charm and charisma, and the best part about it too is I loved every single moment that he started singing. I don't know why. It was just great. And I also have to say, it's kind of funny how Hugh Grant is just this force to be reckoned with con man in 2 March releases. He was in Operation Fortune that released at the beginning of the month, and now he's in Dungeons and Dragons that was released at the end of the month. And he played a fairly similar character, except his Operation Fortune character was a little more menacing. But other than that, it looks like he's just fucking around and having a blast, and honestly, I love that for Hugh Grant. It is great. The rest of the cast were all great, and I do have to say, Justice Smith is also really good in this film. I enjoyed his performance because his character is very similar to a character that I'm running in one of my in a campaign that I'm in, and so I related heavily to the sorcerer who wasn't really good at being a sorcerer. Because of that easy hand grenade for the acting. Now let's talk about my experience and expectations. Yeah, I didn't have super high ones when I first heard of this movie, and then I saw the first trailer, and then I'm like, okay, that's kind of hype. It looks pretty damn fun, and that's what I'm looking for in this film. And then when I actually sat down to watch it, it was a blast. Oh my gosh. My only hamper on the experience is while watching it, it could have been so good in 3D had they focused on it. Like, this is legitimately a movie, like one of the few movies where I'm like, yeah, this would have been a completely different experience seeing it in 3D versus not 3D. So I'm kind of sad that the filmmakers didn't actually take that opportunity to make a 3D version of it, because it's just missed opportunity. The visuals are stunning in so many moments, and it just has that natural 3D feel due to the fact that there's so many arrows flying, and I think those are the perfect movies for 3D. Those with medieval weapons, with arrows flying, and blades flying, and swords clanging, and it's clash, like, it's the perfect 3D movie, and unfortunately it didn't have that 3D element, but that doesn't stop it from being an absolute ride. Banger of a movie. So, with that easy hand grenade score, due to the fact that it flew in way above my expectations, soaring high with a dragon, and not steeping low like a dungeon. I will not apologize for that joke. So, all in all, where does this movie land? It's an easy hand grenade side of the spectrum. This movie is literally super explosive. It's dynamic. It's fun. It is not a boring watch. And that's all you can ask from these types of fantasy epics. It's don't be boring. Like, be Lord of the Rings, Return of the King style epic, and not The Hobbit style boring, because let's be honest. And so, with that being said, be on the lookout as 2 more reviews will be dropping on the channel later. But other than that, I'll leave you guys to it.